Kia ora, I'm Nadine Higgins and welcome to your personal finance podcast, The Prosperity Project. On this podcast, I'm on a mission to empower you financially. I am a columnist and a journalist, an investor, a financial advisor, and the mum of a toddler. But I do not claim to be the font of all knowledge. I'm still figuring it out too. And that's why I'll be bringing you the experts and mining their big brains for all the things you and I need to know every week. Today's episode is for anyone who has looked at the price of houses in this country and felt a bit depressed. Like that particular dream is now out of reach, so why bother trying? While there is no doubt that housing is expensive, there are other ways to get onto the housing ladder, but there is a fair bit you need to know to ensure it doesn't go pear-shaped. A little later, I'm going to talk to Ali Ventura, who teamed up with two friends alongside her husband to buy their first home together. But first, to help us navigate some of the fishhooks, is Amy Stevens, the founder of Slice, a platform that helps people achieve the home ownership dream. Kia ora, Amy.
Kia ora, Nadine. Thanks for having me.
I'm always interested in the personal story of how you came to do what you're currently doing. Did you have personal experience of struggling to get on the housing ladder and finding out the hard way, all the things you didn't know you needed to know?
Yes. The Slice platform was very much born out of my own experience and challenges purchasing property. Yeah, I think I had a background in law and then in finance. But despite having that and despite having people around me that have purchased property, it still did not seem achievable for me. And I think it just felt very out of reach. And I was very overwhelmed at the time as to how I could, achieve that dream. And it was something that I really did want to do. I really did want to get on the ladder. So yeah, it started off very much as a personal experience. And then because I did have that background in law and that background in finance, I knew of some other opportunities or ways to get on the ladder. And I also knew sort of that there were structures in place that could support that. That said, it was still a very complex process, which is kind of why the Slice platform has been born. But I ended up purchasing my first home with my mum as guarantor. So I had a smaller deposit than what would be desirable, but I was a good earner, so I was able to kind of bring mum on that journey, and then she benefited. She received some profit share, and we kind of managed all that through that purchasing process. And then I actually did that again with my partner of 3 months at the time.
3 months?
Yes.
We
met on a dating app.
Sharp intake of breath, like, oh my gosh, how much do you know about them after 3 months? Enough to make your largest purchase with them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd actually done some development of the Slice platform by then, so I was almost like Slice's guinea pig, kind of moving through that platform with my partner. Rather, he was probably the guinea pig because I sort of had that understanding as to the required legal structures and the key decision making that needed to occur to give us confidence to move forward. That said, we were looking at it from a logical perspective as opposed to we're definitely spending the rest of our lives together. But now we're still together, and it's
okay.
I was
hoping you were going to put us out of our misery and tell us it all turned out okay, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Well, you never know. I mean,
you never know.
There's a long road ahead.
Yeah. Which is, I guess, why some of the legal structures you're talking about are so interesting. It isn't just if you cut it differently. It may well be if you buy with a partner, because you just never know what's around the corner. But for those who are trying to get on the ladder for the first time and buying on their own or maybe with their partner, they can't quite get there. What are some of the other options on the table?
So those that are buying on their own can explore things like co-ownership. I think we're hearing more and more about it now, which is great. But it's sort of the banks go through a resurgence every few years of kind of saying, hey, we have this thing. But really, it's the legal structures that become important for those groups. So yeah, certainly you can look to buy with friends. You can look to buy with family. There's also some actually great schemes, private schemes and government-backed initiatives or charitable things like NZ Housing Foundation that can work. So there are a lot of options there, but it's really just about being informed as to which option might be suitable for you. And then as you're exploring that, how you can set that option up for success over the long term.
Let's start with the buying with friends or buying with siblings. I feel like it seems fraught because you're all great friends until, something goes pear-shaped. So how do you set an arrangement like that up for success?
Yeah, it's definitely about front-loading the conversation. So it's not about going, oh, we can afford to do this. That's not enough. And I think that's a challenge with a lot of the support that you get from the financial providers, the banks, is that they'll say, oh yeah, this is an achievable thing. And that's super helpful from a feeling like it's in reach, which is one of the big barriers, is actually just letting people be a bit more curious about those options. But it really is actually not just can you do it, should you do it? Are you the right people to do it together? Are you aligned in terms of values, but also in terms of how you intend to kind of work with that property over time? Does one of you want to sell it in 2 years and the other wants to sell it in 5 or 6 or 7? Or is one of you planning to have a kid? And then, how's that going to be managed if you're all living in the home? So it's really actually having those conversations up front, and through the Slice platform at slicetobuy.com, little plug there. But essentially you'll go through a free tool that actually has you make those key decisions, have those key conversations, actually in advance of before you even need to talk to lawyers, which is that next step, is to formalize that and make sure that you've got that protection in place for the long term.
What do you think the red flags are? That, obviously we all get it. If you buy with more people, there's more income, there's potentially, hopefully, a greater deposit, and so it opens up options that might have been closed to you before. But what are the things that would really put you off buying with friends or family?
I think, this is an interesting question. I think in my life, and I'm sure everyone's had this, you recognize that different people have different money mindsets or different financial goals or different ways in which they behave when it comes to money. So relationship breakdown is a real thing there. I can't remember what the stats are, but in relationships, romantic relationships, a good amount of those fail because of different financial views. So it really is.
I hear you. Sometimes I feel like I'm a relationship counsellor in my day job. It strays into that territory sometimes.
In your day job, I thought you were going to say at home, and I was like, oh no, Nadine. But yeah, so I think there's definitely some red flags there. I think for parents looking to help children, and if you haven't kind of given them a loan before, then it's a good idea to maybe start small and go, hey, what if I do support them if it's early on? What if I help them get this car and I give them that, see if I can get a bit back? What if they have a job, make sure that they're, able to kind of move forward in that way and show that they're responsible in the same way that a bank assesses you when you're responsible. If you're a parent, I think you should be thinking about that. But I think there are red flags, which is like if you've lent money to someone before, or if you've had a financial disagreement before, if you've been flirting with a friend and then they've had a different view on what you should be contributing for in terms of, cleaning products, I don't know, whatever it might be. If you've had challenges there before, then I would tread with caution, but I would just move through a decision kind of process and go, hey, what's your view on this? And the tool guides you through that. And how would we manage if this happens? Like, what if someone wants to add a deck? What are we doing then? Are we all contributing? Or does the person who wants to add the deck, are they contributing? And then what happens to the profit?
When you sell it?
Yeah, how do you manage that? And so our system actually supports with that. But the really key thing is, we do help some people retrofit, and we get them agreements after they've already purchased.
They've kind of maybe gone in a bit blind, and then they've gone, ooh, hold on, how do I exit this when the time is right?
Yeah, and it's way harder, to be honest. And any lawyer will tell you that that's way harder in terms
of...
It's
like a post-nuptial agreement, but for co-owners of a property.
Yeah, it's the ambulance at the end of the cliff, well, not entirely. That's kind of once you end up in family court. Yeah, yeah, you're not fully at the bottom yet. And sometimes actually it's not too late if you have been together and you're still on good terms. That's also still obviously a much better time to do it than when things might be falling apart. And it's not always just about falling apart though. It's also just like you want to avoid disagreement, even if it doesn't collapse entirely. You just want to move forward with confidence and maintain that relationship as best as possible.
How does it work from a lending perspective? Because I think a lot of people will be like, great, I'm only responsible for half the mortgage or a quarter of the mortgage. Yeah. And I know that's not the case, but let's make the point here.
Yeah, so you're joint and severally liable on the loan. I worked in the banks for some time and I was at ASB for a while there, and we looked under the hood at, hey, how could we explore these different financial products? But it's not something I see being released anytime soon. So I think just being aware that actually you're all joint and severally liable on the loan. meaning that if you and I go in and purchase together, Nadine, and I put in 500,000 or I take out a 500k loan that I'm intending to repay, you take out 500k, actually we're both liable for the full 1 million.
Because the bank can't sell half the house.
No, and also the bank,
they've got to sell the lot.
Yeah, they've got to sell the lot, but also they want to have the opportunity to cover either of you. So if you lose your job, can't get it back, and you don't have insurance, income insurance or anything like that, I think that's another really key thing to consider if you're buying with others. Can you get the right insurance to protect you if someone loses their job and they can't make repayments? But essentially, they will go, do you know what, Amy, you have to pay the full amount of that mortgage, including Nadine's share.
Which is huge to go in with somebody else to do that. Where does the legal agreement lie when something like that happens? Is it enforceable to be like, no, you defaulted on your half and therefore you owe me X number of dollars for back mortgage payment?
Well, that's why the legal agreement piece is so important, is because it is plugging that gap. And I think that's what's not well understood or spoken about, is that you need that legal agreement to agree otherwise. That actually, hey, we're not joint and severally liable. Yes, we are in the eyes of the bank, but in terms of our relationship and how we're going to manage these finances, you're actually due that money to me. And so you can actually go through and work through some different scenarios to protect yourself there. Ways being as well, like if you didn't have that agreement and then you just started making the payments, there'd be no guarantee that you'd still be able to get a certain amount of profit out, or it all turns to custard pretty quickly if you don't have a legal agreement to protect you and your share, and also to protect you from the other person not meeting those obligations. There's still a risk there, but it's just much better managed with the right agreement.
And how does it tend to work with the people that you have worked with? Are they buying a house together and living in it together? Are they buying a house together and renting it out to other people? How does it tend to work?
Real mixed bag, bit of both. We have people that are rent vesting, so they'll purchase, had a group of friends come through a week or so ago who just settled on their property and they intend to just rent it out, but they own a share. We have other people, siblings that are all living in the same place, and they very kindly gave the female the ensuite room. So you can see how this deteriorates could deteriorate, if someone says, I want that room. But again, by having the right support and the structure in place, you can set things up.
That was one of the things I was going to ask, because there will be the king pig room that's got the ensuite and the walk-in wardrobe or whatever, and then the box room that no one really wants, and you're like, hey, we both own this house, whatever share.
I want the king suite.
I want the king suite. So
there are mechanisms, or there's ways we can support that. Yeah. So some people they actually just made a decision in that particular situation. But in other groups we've actually gone, do you know what? Moving through this agreement, we can help you structure it so that you agree to each pay market rent first for the rooms, and that's taken off the mortgage. And then any remaining amount of the mortgage is split in accordance to your equity share or whatever it is that you're contributing.
And can it also work if, say a couple and one of their friends buys a place and then the single person gets a partner and you're like, hey, he wants in now too? Can you add extra parties?
Yeah, you definitely can get people to buy in. We do help people purchase. More so, we've actually helped kind of a partner purchase in on a solo partner where they've just actually somehow managed to purchase on their own, which is kudos to them, but then they might want to renovate or do something a bit different. But yeah, certainly we can help bring them in through an agreement structure. And that's super important, because the other thing is that person, if they do move in, might end up having a claim, and then the other two people that you'd originally purchased with aren't protected, and that can generally if they have the agreement in place, their share will be protected, but it can become very messy very quickly if you don't have those structures in place.
Can you talk to me about the messy? Like, what does happen when the wheels fall off? I mean, I guess the worst case scenario is what? You lose the house.
Yeah, you lose the house because, say, someone just stops making repayments, never makes those repayments, the bank comes after the house, they foreclose the house. That's your kind of worst case situation. I guess the other thing though is just the relationship element of it and the emotional stress that comes with it. That's why I know when people think about co-ownership, they're thinking about buying with friends and they're thinking about buying with siblings or just general kind of unique situations, which probably aren't as common as buying with a partner. But I actually see buying a partner as being another form of co-ownership. And particularly because you will see some couples, such as myself, I mean, not everyone's that rogue or that confident to kind of follow the process that I followed. But essentially, there is a very real risk in those relationships as well. And even more so, I think, because ultimately it is an emotional thing being in an intimate relationship, and then to have those financial disagreements, you can actually bring about, the end of the relationship because you haven't front loaded those financial conversations. Whereas if you get on the same page as you're, early on in your relationship, it's a really good opportunity to head in the right direction together.
I've got to give you kudos for bringing out the legal agreements 3 months in, I think. Full respect. Thanks for talking to us, Amy. I do want to talk to you more in a future episode about other ways to skin it, other ways to get on the ladder. But after the break, we're going to talk to someone who has bought with friends about how it's working. Back soon. Welcome back to the Prosperity Project. We've discussed the theory now, but how can this buying with others work in practice? Ali Ventura bought a home with her husband Josiah and their 2 friends. The 4 of them all lived there together and in fact recently became a fivesome after Ali and Josiah welcomed their first child, Arlo. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Nadine.
This might sound like a really obvious question, but what prompted you to buy with other people? Was it that you couldn't buy on your own, or you'd just end up in a shoebox saddled with too much debt, so you looked at it differently? What was it?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of all of that. It's it's almost now, I can't even remember kind of how it came to be. We just, we had been in lockdown and, you start sort of questioning what you're going to do with your life and money. You can't travel, that sort of thing. And we'd been living with our 2 friends for like 7 years at that point. And, paying for, and we'd had landlords and we were not kicked out because we'd done anything wrong, but because the market was so good, they kept selling the houses out from under us. So we were moving every year and we just thought maybe we could just get something together. And I mean, there may have been a situation where Josiah and I could have just bought a place, but actually, like you said, it would have been a shoebox. It would have been really hard to actually make the mortgage work week to week. And so we thought, well, why don't we just continue what we're doing now, but with our own house?
Is it fair to say, given you had been living with your friends, this couple, for so long, that you'd kind of done the due diligence, that you knew you could all rub along together quite nicely?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we would have even thought of it if it hadn't been going well. Like we knew that we could live together. We knew that if we were going to find another rental, we would be doing it together. And we loved it. It just could have worked in our lifestyle, but they're our best friends. So we got to hang out with our best friends every day. So I think that we kind of knew going in that all the parts that you have to do when you buy a house together. So all of the hard conversations, we'd already had them. We'd already been splitting costs. We'd already been talking about what to do about this and that in the house. So it didn't mean that we didn't have to have more hard conversations, but we kind of knew that we could have them.
Yeah. So what sort of hard conversations did you have to have? Because while you can live together, this is a big financial commitment together, and life can throw you all sorts of what ifs and curveballs. So what sort of legal process did you go through?
Well, we got a lawyer for both couples, basically. So independent lawyers. So we knew that we had our own people kind of in our own court to kind of tell us what we needed to put down in writing. What do we actually have to go through? And we drafted up this legal document, and essentially we spent a night and we just asked each other all these questions. We were like, okay, well, what if one of us has a baby? What if one of us dies? What if we break up? What if we have a falling out? And we just sort of had all of these questions and answers, and we put them all in legal documents. And then we also had to do some financial figuring out, because we were putting different amounts in. We were using KiwiSavers and that sort of thing. So we had something written down in the contract about how it would all come out in the wash if we had to sell or something like that.
And so was any of that awkward or difficult, or because you know each other so well that you were happy enough to just put all your cards out on the table?
was both. It was awkward and it's difficult, like it is awkward having those conversations with people, even if you love them, even if you know them so well. And I think the thing about it is actually having the conversation. So a lot of times worry about what someone is going to say about certain things, and then you find out they're thinking the same thing, or, so I think the best part about doing it with our friends was that we could broach the conversation and then go from there.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be wanting to pick some random off the street and saying, hey, let's pool resources, buy a house and live in it together.
Absolutely not. I mean, when we did this, it was two reactions from people. People would say, oh my God, that's an amazing idea. Or they would say, oh, I know a friend of a friend and it just absolutely went wrong. Their friendship of 40 years absolutely disintegrated. And we were just like, okay, like that's great. Like maybe don't say that to us. But also it's understandable. We did have that thing of these are our really good friends. What if we ruin it? We didn't want to ruin the relationship. And, so far so good. But I would definitely say you have to be really, really sure that you can have those conversations and that you really like these people before you do it.
It's one thing living with your best friends. It's another thing living with your best friends and their new baby, which is what you have now done. You brought your beautiful wee boy into the world about 3 months ago. Was there ever a discussion when you got pregnant like, oh, is now when we pull the trigger and go our separate ways, or do we stay in this? What was the discussion?
Yeah, so Josiah and I had that conversation and we were really nervous. So we had it together as a couple we were really nervous. What were we going to do? Are we going to leave? Are we going to rent somewhere? Are we going to ask them to sell? Are we going to renovate the house to make it bigger? Are we going to do this, this, and this? And we were really worried about it. It was actually like quite a lot of anxiety, even though we were so excited about the baby. And we actually realized that we didn't do kind of what I said is the right rule, is you just talk to them first. And so once we actually had that conversation with Maddie and Adam, they were like, hey, we love this baby. We love you guys. We're excited to see this baby and we're going to make it work. And we kind of went back and forth about whether we should do a renovation or this or that, and the market and our rate, all the kind of stuff that you talk about. And they actually said, look, we can still live here. This place we've got a spare room. We'll move into that. You guys can have our room. And we're just going to the baby's going to be the size of a loaf for a long time. So let's just wait. And so what we've done is we've brought this baby into this house and they absolutely love him and they've been really, really great. And, it's really great to be able to have someone there when I need to go to the bathroom. And, the baby's crying. I can say, can you watch him? So, yes, again, so far so good. But we did really have to have that conversation and it was much better once we did.
So is all the nitty-gritty stuff of who gets the best room and do they pay any different, and are we going to do some renovations or whatever, does it all come down to what's in the agreement and let's have a chat?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we haven't even really looked at the agreement since we did it. It was kind of like that thing of once you've got it on paper, you kind of know, you now have it all in the open, like we know what the eventualities are. So at some point, I'm sure we'll probably have to be like, hey, we've reached this point and we need to look at the next step, which is whether it's selling or whatever. We haven't yet reached that point. But yeah, we do kind of like at the moment we have to fix the shower up. So all of us are kind of talking about, okay, well, what can we all afford right now? Which way do we want to go about it? I think as well, like I said, because we've lived together before, these conversations are like very normal. We all and we can be really honest and say, hey, actually this week I can't afford this, or can we do it this way? Can we actually, we're not going to have the couch, upgrade our couch this time, we're going to fix the shower, that kind of thing. And it kind of means that you can talk through it and just be really honest about how everyone's dealing with it.
The market is down a bit since you bought. Does that factor into any of your long-term thinking? Because I'm guessing you're both hoping that this is the springboard where you create some equity and go on to buy your own place.
Yeah, when people ask us now about how it is owning a home with your friends, we always say it's amazing, but we wish we hadn't bought at the peak. But you know what? Like everyone says that, right? Like in Auckland particularly. But we did happen to buy pretty much at the peak of the housing market, and it has since definitely gone down. And so our house is it's just simply not worth what we paid for it at the time. It doesn't mean it won't be at some point, but right now it's not. And so that's basically why we've also said, let's wait a little bit, because, these things change, and we kind of making a decision right now, it's going to be very different to the decision we might make in 6 months or a year. Or it might be the same decision, but at least we've had a while to kind of think about it and go through it. And I think that we have had to be realistic about the fact that it actually might not be a springing board. We might not come out of this with a huge amount of equity. But what we always kind of said when we bought the place is like, if the market goes down, the point is we have had a really great roof over our head for 3 years. At this point, we have been able to really enjoy, not have to deal with landlords or property managers or anything like that for the past few years. And that has been it's really been a relief. And we absolutely love our house. Like every day we kind of look at it and we're like, this place is beautiful. And so it is that thing of like, even if it ends up being actually a really bad decision, we've had a really great few years with our friends, in our early 30s, and that's kind of nice. And at the end of it, we hope that we will have something to, some financial gain, but we're not there yet.
You actually make it sound so appealing. Do you think maybe it is the way forward? My husband and I spent a good few weeks staying with friends while we were renovating with our child, and it was amazing. Like, if you get the right person, is there something in this communal living?
I mean, I think there is something in communal living. Like, I do think there is something in community, particularly with having a baby. Both of our parents don't live in Auckland, and we don't have, a huge amount of extended family to help or to just be there. But we have our best friends that we live with, and that is hugely helpful. I will say that I would not recommend it to people unless they are absolutely sure. Or, I mean, you can never be 100% sure. You feel good about it. You're not nervous about it. You're not, there's a lot of caveats to this kind of living situation. It's kind of like, think about all the, I guess, disagreements maybe you have, or the issues you have with your partner in buying a house. You now have to do it with 2 other people as well. So I think we like it. It's really worked for us. And so it really just depends on your situation. How's that for a fence-sitting answer? But,
Yeah. Is there anything, though, if you went back and did it again, you'd do differently?
I think the one thing is that no matter how much you kind of say, oh, we'll be okay with the fact, like I was being very philosophical about the fact that we'll be okay if we don't get anything out of it. It is obviously still a disappointment. And when we were in that moment in, was it 2022 or 2021 when we bought, and we were like, oh, well, the market might go down. We really probably didn't realize how much it would change and how quickly it would change. And, right after that, soon after that, I was made redundant from my job and my financial status changed. So I think I would like to have my eyes, if my eyes are a bit more open to the fact that your financial situation can change quite quickly and things can change quite quickly in the market and all of that kind of stuff. So then it wouldn't be as anxiety inducing when you're looking at your beautiful property that's now worth, so much less than it was. And you're thinking, oh no, is this a bad idea? I think we're in that place right now where we're like, hey, look, we made a decision and we're going to stick with it. But in the future, like if I were to do it again, I probably would be like, hey, the future is unknowable. So just be really, really clear about that and don't have any expectations about the millions you're going to make on your house. Yeah,
well, and it's only worth less if you actually sell it. So keep living that happy family dream, all 5 of you together. Thanks so much for sharing your story. Appreciate it, Ali.
Thanks, Nadine.
Thanks for listening to The Prosperity Project. You can follow this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and please do chuck us a rating or a review while you're there. For more personal finance and business content, head to nzherald.co.nz, and please do feel free to get in touch with your questions and your stories. nadine.higgins@nzme.co.nz. A reminder though that this podcast is informational only and nothing we say here should be considered personalised financial advice. But also remember that while listening to this podcast is hopefully going to be additive to your financial knowledge, and that is fantastic, knowing stuff doesn't create change. Doing stuff does. So what action are you going to take today to make your life more prosperous? My producer for this episode is Ethan Sills. Sound engineer is Richard Martin. I'm Nadine Higgins. Thanks for listening to The Prosperity Project.